I'm Dan Bigman, Editor-in-Chief Content Officer, Chief Executive Group, and we hope you're enjoying the event so far. Thanks for joining us now for the Patriots in Business Award celebration and panel discussion on veteran support initiatives. As leaders, it is important to find a cause that we are passionate about and can make a difference in the lives of others. So together, Chief Executive Group and Thayer Leadership are making an ongoing effort to raise awareness of best practices among America's corporate leaders when it comes to helping military veterans and their families. 4 years ago, we created the Patriots in Business Award to recognize the innovative and dedicated initiatives of companies big and small to support America's veteran and military families in meaningful ways. In doing so, we hope to inspire more CEOs to improve or begin their support efforts beyond just hiring. Before we honor this year's winners, we would like to thank the judges, a panel of Veterans Affairs experts and executives with military backgrounds, including representatives from our 2019 and 2020 award honorees, for their dedication and time in reviewing the nominations. This was among the toughest award deliberations we have seen yet, thanks to the great veteran initiatives of all our applicants and the seriousness of the judges bring to the process. So let me thank Nick Pinchuk, Chairman and CEO of Snap-on, Colby Barrett, CEO of Geostabilization International, our 2019 Patriots in Business Award recipient, Terry Flanagan, CEO J-Dog Brands, who won in 2019, Tom Karinchak, Chief Customer Experience Officer for Comcast, who won in 2020, Todd McIntosh, CEO of HumeCap, 2020 Patriots in Business Award recipient, Tony Felice, Managing Director, Drexel Hamilton, who won in 2020. Thanks to all of them, they put in a lot of hard work. And now to present the awards. In the category of small business, we would like to congratulate Principal Services. Principal Services is a veteran-owned small business with the mission of providing infrastructure solutions to help owners develop and execute projects with quality, integrity, and efficiency. Troy Vaughn, a 2004 West Point graduate and president and majority owner of Principal Services, gave us the following advice on how to support veterans. He says, educate your team, build processes that are more repeatable, and hold your team accountable to meeting your ideas for helping veterans and their families. You must provide education to your team and coach veterans to bridge the gap between veterans and civilians. Congratulations to Principal Services, and thank you for your work that you're doing to support veterans. In the mid-sized business category, we'd like to congratulate Greencastle Associates Consulting. Greencastle is a veteran-owned implementation consulting firm with the mission of helping clients to successfully meet the challenges of an ever-changing business landscape. CEO of Greencastle Associates, Joe Crandall, has this big takeaway for engaging veterans. Ensure they are the right person for the right job, but beyond that, they need training, guidance, and direction. The programs we developed and give the individual team the left and right limits, goals to be accomplished, and the intent. Equipped with this and the authority to make decisions in a trusting work environment are all that we need to see superior results. Congratulations to Greencastle, and thank you for the work your team is doing to support veterans. In the category of large enterprise, we'd like to congratulate Bristol Myers Squibb. Their mission is to discover, develop, and deliver innovative medicines that help patients prevail over serious diseases. CEO of Bristol Myers Squibb, Giovanni Cafaro, his best advice for retaining veterans is don't wait, start now. Look within the organization to find employees who are passionate about increasing veteran representation. Once you've identified that group, share the organization's vision and then empower the group to make decisions. Congratulations to the team at Bristol Myers Squibb. And finally, in the category of military service business, we'd like to congratulate USAA. Their mission is to facilitate financial security of its members, associates, and their families through provision of a full range of highly competitive financial products and services. In doing so, USAA seeks to be the provider of choice for the military community. Wayne Peacock, CEO and president of USAA, gives the following tip for how to get better at hiring, supporting, and retaining veterans. CEOs must be willing to hold their leaders accountable, he says, for measurable outcomes that support attracting, developing, and retaining military-affiliated employees. Hiring is just the start. Creating conditions to grow and advance is the key to sustained progress. So congratulations to USAA through their initiatives on hiring, training, supporting, and honoring active duty veterans and military families. These 4 outstanding companies are the gold standard for other companies who seek to support those who serve and exemplify the values of duty, honor, and country through their business practices and throughout their community and their industry. Congratulations again to all this year's winners and all of the companies who submitted nominations for the Patriots in Business Award. Now, to continue the conversation around veterans initiatives and capitalizing on military talent within your organization, we have the honor today to speak with three experienced leaders who have served and seek to support those others who have served. In a time where literally every CEO I talk to says that the fight for great talent is their most pressing concern, the ability to attract and retain veterans and build a system for doing so is a true strategic advantage for every organization. But far too often, companies get bogged down in conversations about being unable to find veterans to hire, and all too many companies struggle with bringing them in and retaining them over the long haul. We're going to talk about how to solve for all that and give you a leg up on other companies when it comes to hiring former members of the military to build your organization. To do so, please welcome Dan Goldenberg, Vice President for Corporate Social Responsibility at Activision Blizzard, and Executive Director at the Call of Duty Endowment and a U.S. Navy veteran. Ben Biles, CEO and founder at American Veterans Group and also a U.S. Navy veteran. And finally, General Chris Cortez, Vice President of Military Affairs at Microsoft, retired Major General in the U.S. Marine Corps. Gentlemen, thank you all for being with us, and happy Veterans Day to you all.
Same to you. Thanks for being.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you all on here. Before I begin, I just want to remind the audience that we'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So send in your questions at any time, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So with that, let's start with the most basic and most perplexing question, at least for me of all. Why in an era where we have so many skilled jobs going unfilled in the US, are we even having this conversation about hiring vets today? General Cortez, what's your take? Why are we even talking about this given the economy that we're in right now?
Well, it's because so much has happened over the last year and a half or so. I mean, going into COVID, we already had a delta when it comes to hiring of veterans. And with COVID, so many jobs went away. And now with things getting better, companies are scrambling. They need talent. There's a talent gap. And, you know, when you look at the fact that 200,000 military members leave every year, and the diversity of this talent, I mean, the companies that get it are targeting the veteran community because they have a lot to offer. These are people that have been tested. At a young age, they were given positions of serious leadership, and they've had to quickly mature into a world of that really challenged them. So, you know, those are just some of the reasons why today veteran talent is out there, and companies that get it should go after it.
But Dan, Ben, maybe you can hop in. Like, what? You know, you would think that this is a no-brainer, right? Like, you know, we've been at war for 20 years. We've trained from, you know, almost 2 generations of incredible people. Why is veterans hiring even an issue with the unemployment level we've got right now? Yeah, what do you guys hear?
Yeah, we like to think of it as an economic problem. There's a market inefficiency here between the supply of job-ready veterans and the companies that are ready to hire them. You know, there's at the top of the broadcast, there was a comment made that, you know, the veteran unemployment rate is low. The problem with that is the veteran unemployment rate is largely bogus. It's based on, and the U.S. unemployment rate is based on one question that's been asked every month, which is, last week were you paid for work? That is the question. And if you answer yes, you're counted as fully employed. That is the U.S. employment rate. So who's captured under that? If you mowed your neighbor's lawn last week for $50, fully employed. 10 hours a week as a barista, fully employed. You drilled in the Garter Reserve last week, but don't have a civilian job, fully employed. So let's start with that. Like, the U.S. unemployment rate itself has a lot of problems, especially for the veterans. Second of all, quality matters. We find over and over again veterans coming to our grantees. We're the largest funder of veteran employment in the country. private, non-governmental. We funded the placement of more than 90,000 vets in the job so far. And we stay very close in touch with all of our grantees. And what they were seeing a few years back was a lot of veterans coming to them saying, I've got a job, I've got 2 jobs, but I can't pay the rent. And what it came really down to is underemployment, is veterans were being hired into roles beneath their objective skill set and experience. And it's a real problem. And underemployment is a trend that affects our whole economy. In fact, you could argue it affects Western civilization. It just hits veterans harder. Veterans are 16% more likely than non-vets to be underemployed. And it's been validated and revalidated over and over again. The most recent study, the Transitioning Veterans Metrics Initiative out of Penn State, shows that there's a 60% underemployment rate amongst veterans. So let's start with the notion that fit is not occurring here the way it should. It's all about, a reporter of the Washington Post asked me a couple of years ago, he said, Dan, there's so many jobs, just like you said, other Dan, in the economy that are good jobs that need employees, that companies are desperate for hiring. And there's so many veterans who are unemployed or underemployed. What's going on? Where's the disconnect? And it's about 2 things. It's about job-ready veterans who are prepared to succeed in the job market, number 1, and 2, companies that are ready to hire them. And I would argue, I tell veterans all the time, thank you for your service. You're now in a capitalist economy that you are defending. It's your job to be ready to succeed in that market. We are here to help you. The TAP program that DoD and the Department of Labor administer is necessary, but far from sufficient for preparing them. I can't tell you how many, and I'm sure many of us have experienced this, how many veterans will come to a company and say, I'd love to work here. And the recruiter will say, great, what do you want to do? And they'll say, I'll do anything, which is absolutely the wrong answer, right?
Yeah, that's quite an interview response. It's not the most helpful.
Great value in the military, not really valued in the civilian sector. So we've got to get the supply of job-ready vets up. We've got to make sure these veterans are connecting with customized, assistance to prepare them for the job market so they can market themselves. So we don't have infantrymen saying, I'm just a door kicker when they go into that, the hiring mindset. And then on the demand side, companies have to be more open-minded about training and mentoring veterans and really being more open-minded about the value their service brings to the jobs they're trying to hire.
And Ben, what you talk to a lot of veterans about this. Why the market mismatch? What are you hearing when you talk to folks?
Well, when I talk to veterans themselves, I think there is a little bit of a cultural barrier between trying to explain how the skills and experiences the veterans had transferred to the private sector, and vice versa with the companies themselves, trying to understand, the MOS that a veteran had and how it's applicable to certain jobs. And, to echoing on Dan's point, I think the veterans are a little bit more ambiguous, a little bit more vague in exactly what they're looking for. To that same point, a lot of companies that we work with and serve also are having a really difficult time finding veterans. Probably it's a lot to take on. And so I think some of the best practices that we've seen with companies that are hiring veterans is not trying to take it all on themselves, to try to figure out who to partner with, whether it's different nonprofits they trust, different vendors that can help them, just really trying to make it look for good partnerships instead of trying to do it all yourself, and be honest about and realistic about what your limited resources are.
And all 3 of you have gone through this. So let's take a minute. What were your experiences like transitioning out of the military, and what made the difference when you were picking an organization to call home? Ben, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, so I think my experience was, I was very lucky. I went to the Naval Academy for college. I was a recruited basketball player. And, I just thought, I think like a lot of veterans, that, the private sector was going to, really appreciate my experiences, and jobs were going to be plentiful. And I think what I realized when I got out was, even for me, it was a big slice of humble pie. I had a really difficult time, I think, explaining my experience as a logistics officer to that in the private sector. I remember going on LinkedIn and seeing that, security officer at Walmart was like the job for me, that was and there's nothing wrong with those jobs, but I guess for me, I needed to cross that barrier between really understanding my experiences, what I liked, what was challenging for me, in trying to find those right opportunities. At the same time, I think that I needed to work really hard on broadening my network. I think my network when I was in the service was very active duty focused. And there's great people, obviously, that are in active duty. And then I had a few friends, veterans that had recently transitioned who were either at business schools or working at companies. And I think that the best practice that I saw in myself was really broadening my network and finding, friends and advisors in working in the private sector. And I think that was a key to success that I encourage a lot of the veterans that I work with to do.
General, how about you? You get out of the Marine Corps, you're a general, it's easy, right? Who doesn't want a retired general from the Marine Corps?
Look, I spent a lot of time with transitioning military members of all ranks, of all years of experience. And I can tell you that transition is tough. It's tough for anyone. I mean, here you are, you've been in the military, that's all you've done for a period of time. And the questions are, okay, how am I going to translate what I did in the military out there in the civilian market? And you go through all these exercises and everybody goes through the same thing. So the bottom line is transition, when you're really serious about it, becomes a full-time job. I mean, as was said, there's networking, there's, you've got to reach out, you've got to talk to people. Then, you've got to put together a good resume. You've got to, get your interview skills toned up. And it's a process. It's a lot of work. But the longer you work at it, the better you get. And so, I will typically spend 30, 45 minutes with whoever wants to talk about transition. And we need to do that. Those of us that successfully transitioned, that's great. But now we have to reach back and help those that are going to go through the same thing. And, I think that's an important aspect for all of us to have top of mind.
Yep. And I'd love to get a little deeper. Maybe you can give us a tip in a minute. But Dan, how about you? What was it like when you got out of the service and when you were trying to break into the civilian sector?
I think I was lucky in that I had a similar background to Ben. And I knew what I didn't know. I knew that, wow, I knew I wanted to go in the commercial sector. I knew what I didn't know. And I said, you know what, I need to take some time to figure this out. So I went to business school full time. And really, it was great. I met other veterans there who had already had business experience, got some incredible advice from them. And of course, built, as Ben said, my network broadened a lot before I entered the workforce. So I knew the kind of person I was. I needed that. I needed to learn the language of business before I was applying for a job. I really had to understand what was out there. For me, that was a great transition vehicle. Unfortunately, what we see a lot is I can't, and we probably all experienced this, hearing from veterans who say, I've dropped 100 resumes and I haven't gotten a single interview. What's wrong with me? And the answer is often, you haven't learned the unwritten rules of how to get a job in the corporate sector. And it's really, really important because there's a lot. We live in a world where people think the technology just works. And if we just hit submit over and over again, eventually we'll get an offer. And this is not how it works, right? To Ben's point and Chris's point about networking, it's not just a network, it's the quality of the network. It's the network. And LinkedIn did an amazing study on this a couple years back, led by Sarah Roberts, by the way, West Pointer. I'll tip my hat to her. She's amazing. But the quality of the veteran network, meaning, has people in there who can really help you with your careers. People are already out there and so really important. There's the mentorship component. People can help you learn those written rules. Veterati is an incredible resource, ACP, a fantastic resource at veterans, mentors that they need. You need someone to help Sherpa you through this process. And TAP is insufficient to do that. Going to Our Heroes, USA, Vet Jobs, just to name two. We have 10. You can go to callofdutyendowment.org and look at our partners. They're highly vetted. It's free and it's customized. So you need someone to help you on the journey And I think to Chris's point, you need to make time and space for the transition. You need to be able to, it takes time, it's hard. And by the way, I think something we can all relate to, really hard to find a job when you have a job, right? It's a really difficult thing. So you've got to create this time and space for the search.
And I will say though, when I hear everything that you're saying, right, what all of you are saying right now, what I see is a wonderful market inefficiency that smart companies can pounce on, right? So if there's a secret language of business and all this that people need to get to know, what can give a tip to companies to get ahead of the line here, to get these great people who may not speak the secret language or have the right network or anything else? Because it seems that when you're looking for great people, being able to do that, to go to the veteran rather than have the veteran jump through all the hoops to come to you, learning how to do that would be a big advantage, would it not, General?
No, absolutely. And it's all about being veteran ready. You know, we talk about being veteran friendly. Hey, yeah, we have opportunities here for veterans. Check that block. But when you're veteran ready, your recruiters have talked about the value of veterans. When you're veteran ready, you have an employee resource group made up of veterans where veterans really feel a brotherhood, where they belong. You have mentorship where people that come from the military have a mentor because, hey, it's tough. You know, it's tough when you get into a corporate environment out of the military, and you're going to have a lot of questions and you're going to need some help. So, you know, all of that, being veteran ready, goes hand in glove with being able not only to hire, but to retain.
And one of those things that seems to be a gap here is the misalignment between military skills and the job descriptions that we all publish, right? So, you know, what do you get, or what can you expect when you hire a vet, and how do you kind of jump that line a little bit? Maybe make the case, Dan, for thinking a little more deeply about your job descriptions and translating that to MOSs and everything else that comes along with understanding military veterans.
It's a wonderful point, Dan, and I'm sure we've also all experienced this. So how many of us have a college degree as an absolute requirement for all of our jobs in our companies, right? Or for the vast majority of them. If someone's not turning a wrench or wielding a cutting tool, you know, and is that always necessary? You know, if you take a Marine logistician, E5, E6, bet you they know a lot more about supply chain than your typical college graduate, right? I've seen this firsthand. I actually, years ago when I first came in this job, argued with a recruiter at the company who said, I was actually putting a candidate in front of them who was a Marine, E5, with incredible experience, both from the Marine Corps and the commercial sector, but he never had bothered to get his degree. And they said, well, we don't hire people without degrees. And I said, well, please tell our CEO that. He dropped out of college to run this company. So he's done okay. So, you know, but it's like getting recruiters first to think about skills more than degrees, proven experience more than degrees. Super, super important. I think that opens up. It's hard to get recruiting organizations across the board can be some of the most unimaginative organizations in the corporate world. They've got to broaden their horizons and find ways where they can evaluate someone's experience and skill set based pure on things other than a piece of paper from a university or college. Number one, I think that's an incredibly important thing. Another thing I'd recommend every company do, you know, there's some amazing programs like, well, Chris hasn't fully given Microsoft the credit it deserves, but like their MSSA program, Microsoft Systems and Software Academy, they've realized there's a skills gap and they're bridging the skills gap, not just for themselves, but for other companies, especially with respect to IT, a variety of IT skills. It's an amazing program, and there's a number of programs like that out there. So you can do that. You can partner with other companies, but I think you also, you know, you need to think about what are the ways into your company that may be a little non-traditional. You know, can you create apprenticeship programs? There's an authorization under the VAL Act that allows member servicemen in the last 6 months of their enlistment or time in service at the discretion of their commanding officer serve in internships, apprenticeships, and training while they're being paid at no cost to your company. A lot of companies have not taken advantage of it. Hiring Our Heroes runs a great corporate fellows program that addresses that. So I think it's about thinking about what are some different and innovative ways to bring people with the right skill set and experience, but perhaps not the right, university paper into your company.
Ben, what else have you seen? What else do you see that works? Give us a tip.
So to go back to the question of what makes, I think, veterans special in the workforce, I think one of the benefits of a military experience is the rich diversity that is found in the military. I found myself working with folks from all 50 states, all different walks of life, and I just think it was really enriching to myself. And I think that in today's environment, specifically around diversity and inclusion, I don't think you can find an institution that's better fitted for that than the U.S. military. Secondly, I think one thing that really is a competitive advantage that veterans bring to the workforce is the implementation of ethics or ethical ethics in decision making. I think that was something that I just kind of grew up with in my military experience. But as I got more into my private sector career and went to business school and were around colleagues from different industries, different large companies, I realized that ethics wasn't necessarily imparted in all these decisions. And I think for myself in the military, I was always thinking about, it wasn't Ben Biles, private citizen, making a decision. It was always, U.S. naval officer or U.S. Service member. I think that's really important. That's something veterans bring to the equation. I think another one is because veterans are always focused on the mission. I think you have a special kind of conceptual decision making that's really interesting. I think veterans are less likely to maybe operate in a silo I think they take a step back more often than not and see how their initiative is part of a bigger whole, which is so important. Those two things I think really stand out. And then the ability to work to accomplish things with limited resources, I think is so important and ingrained in the military experience. I always think about when I was on my aircraft carrier, and if our TV broke, we didn't have a TV repairman to come and fix it, right? We had to figure it out ourselves. But we were often given, very limited resources to accomplish big things. And I think that's so incredibly important in the private sector.
Again, we talk so much about, and you hear so many people talk about higher character trained skills, hear that, so much character driven leadership, but we've talked about networks and not having them getting in the way, mismatches in job descriptions, things like that. What else, when it comes to hiring, gets in the way that you found in bringing these folks into the organization, whether it's just training hiring managers or algorithms, or what else might not we even be aware of that the folks watching this right now need to get on top of? And how do you diagnose that? How do you know when your HR folks are coming back and saying, we tried with veterans, it just didn't pan out? How do you know that they're doing the right stuff? Dan, what do you think?
I'm fired up on this question. So, it's really interesting how when we dwell on a topic like this, when we face it as a company, we sort of leave our analytical mindsets at the door and we get emotional and we start throwing, well, what about this job fair? What about this mentorship program? Da, da, da. We should not do that. We should take an analytical approach and understand where our hiring pipeline, which we would look at for any diversity group, right, is succeeding, and then fix it based on where the problem is. So if you think of a hiring funnel, at the top you have sourcing, people coming into the top of the funnel, and then you have screening. You have recruiters checking them, doing a phone screen, going through or doing resume reviews first on a phone screen. Then they carry that stack of resumes over to the hiring manager and they say, who do you want to interview? And maybe you have 5, they'll say 2. And then the interview happens. And then if the interview goes well, there's a contingent job offer, and then there's a background check. At any one of those levels, failures can occur. And I encourage every company to look and say, what does our percentage pipeline look like for everyone and for veterans? And when you see the disconnects, and we saw it at Activision Blizzard too, that, for instance, our problem with sourcing was at the very top. We weren't bringing enough veterans to hit our goal at the very top. So we had to invest in things that would make us more appealing, like we created this Veterans Guide to Activision Blizzard to the larger veteran community. And that's where the resources needed to be. But you might find, for instance, that veterans aren't passing the screen at a high rate. So maybe we need to train our recruiters to better understand veteran interviews, or they're passing the screen at the same rate, but they're not getting the interviews. The hiring managers aren't taking them because the hiring managers look at this and they say, well, this resume is weird. This doesn't look like what I'm used to seeing. So maybe we need to train the hiring managers, or probably more realistic, train the recruiters to have harder conversations with hiring managers, be better salespeople for these resumes. But the bottom line is you need to take a step back, be analytical like you would any other business problem, find the source of the veteran pipeline problems. And I will tell you, at every level, there's a good solution out there, but just don't waste time on the wrong one.
In general, you obviously, as Dan pointed out, Microsoft's become very good at this. Help the rest of us. How do you guys do it? How do you organize and create systems that do reach in there and successfully attract veterans?
Well, Dan Bigman, I got to tell you, I've been in the company just a little over 15 years now. And for the entire 15 years, there's been a group of us focused on everything we're talking about. Dan Goldenberg mentioned a little while ago, MSSA, the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy. We stood that up in 2013. A 17-week, think of a technology boot camp for our military who want to get into the technology industry. Regardless of what you do in the military, I mean, we have cooks, we have medics, logisticians, truck drivers. It doesn't matter what you did in the military. All you need are some fundamentals, some training. And now you're taking somebody that has so many skill sets, you're giving them a training for an industry where there's a huge demand. So I can tell you that after 8 years, we have over 3,000 graduates from this program. We have a 95% graduation rate. 99% of those that graduate are either employed today, or a few went back to get their computer science degree. And we have over 1,000 companies that have hired from this program.
So this is available to, and you have this academy, it's open to anyone. Obviously, it gives you a first look at talented people, but they can go on and do anything with anyone else.
Well, that's right. I mean, we never expected to hire 100% from this program at all, but we have an opportunity to hire the ones that we would like to hire. It's not a guarantee that they're going to come with us, but we have a really good look. And then, like I said, over 1,000 companies that hire the rest. And with a 99% either employed, or if you go back to school, I mean, that's a win-win for everybody. That's a win-win for Microsoft. That's a win-win for the technology industry.
How'd you get the buy-in to get this going? Obviously, Microsoft, bigger than most companies by a little bit. There's some more resources. And obviously, when you're talking about software, there's been essentially a 0% unemployment rate for a decade. People are just stealing from each other. But how'd you get the buy-in? How did you get that company focused on something when that company has so much to focus on?
You've got to do your homework. You've got to be prepared. You have to present a case that is meaningful. And then you've got to go to the top. And you've got to say, hey, this program is something that would benefit the company. It's all about return on investment, right?
Yep.
And if you have something that's valuable that you're not doing, that's going to help your company, then let's talk about it. And that's how you do it. And people listened. They said, okay, let's do it. And here we are 8 years into it. And it's highly successful.
And Ben, this would seem to be a golden moment for doing the kinds of things that Dan and Chris are talking about because of the ROI, right? So this is very much not a nice thing to do for people thing, hiring veterans anymore. This is with all due respect, not even a patriotic thing to do. This is just a smart thing to do, right? To get these people in the door. So what have you seen that works, and how have you seen that change recently?
Totally agree. I mean, I think we've seen different military hiring initiatives from all different shapes and sizes. But I think the one thing that's that I've seen from General Cortez, Microsoft, and Dan, they've been very good at as well, is building partnerships. Not trying to take on everything themselves. I know that the military hiring initiatives folks that we've spoken to at their respective institutions have built like a great infrastructure of different, nonprofit partners that they've worked with to help to lead a kind of a coalition on how do they find these veterans, and then to Dan's point, how do we find qualified veterans, and what does qualified veterans mean to us? And so I think they understand that there are impediments, whether they be cultural, et cetera, and they're willing to take those on and face them. And I think with that and building the right partnerships with these with this recruiting infrastructure in place, been wildly successful, and their institutions have been huge benefactors of veteran talent.
When we had our prep call, one of my favorite things, we got into a discussion of what are some of the military jobs that are real alignments with things that are really needed. And I was surprised by some of the impediments that were found. Dan, can you talk a little bit about some of the military jobs that are directly applicable to things where we're having huge shortages in the US right now? The one that I love, the story you had about trucking and what got in the way, like the US is suffering from such a dearth of truckers right now. But until recently, it was almost impossible to hire an Army truck driver, right?
Oh man, this gets me fired up too. So you're asking good questions. So there's a great program the Army runs called Soldier for Life. It's basically the Army's alumni network. The Marine Corps has one as well. We're called Marine for Life, actually founded by General Jim Jones, our co-chair of the endowment. And anyway, Soldier for Life every year puts out a list of the most unemployed military occupational specialties. 5 of the top 6 are ones we desperately need right now in this country, to include mechanics, medics, truck drivers, supply chain, sound familiar, communications specialists. Those are the 5 of the 6. The 6th one,
these are of the most unemployed veterans. And yes, the categories you're naming, whenever I pick up the Wall Street Journal, those are the places I'm hearing. Whenever I talk to CEOs, I wish I could find a. Yeah. Right.
So that's the first problem, right? And by the way, the 6th one is infantry, but that's not surprising, right? Infantry is a little harder. Shouldn't be, but is. But let's just dive into 2. Let's talk about, and we just published a study literally last week about medics and hospital corpsmen. Those are the medics who serve the Navy and the Marine Corps. It's shocking. 50% of medics and hospital corpsmen who want to work in the healthcare industry cannot get jobs in the healthcare industry. It's absolutely staggering. And we published a whole report on why that is with some recommendations. You go to callofdutyendowment.org/med, our studies there. But medics is one area. Let's go into the truck driver example because it's so unbelievable. So the Army produces a lot of truck drivers. MOS is transportation every year. They could drive a rig through Khyber Pass, but drive a rig on I-10. Why? Because until recently, the Army didn't teach these truck drivers to do one thing: back up a truck by themselves to a loading dock. They had to have another driver get out and sort of wave them in. Good safety precaution, makes sense. The problem is, it doesn't work in the commercial world because we can't afford to have 2 truck drivers in every truck. So we literally have had tens of thousands of truck drivers from the military who could not get their commercial driver's license because of this. So one of our grantees, Vet Jobs, they work with Swift Transportation, which is the largest trucking company in America, and they created backup scholarships. So they about 3 days teaching them how to back trucks up to loading dock, and guess what? They were all able to get their commercial driver's licenses. In the first year of this program, Swift hired 3,000 veteran truck drivers. By the way, their retention rates are double those of non-veterans. So you want to talk about a business case for hiring them. These are folks who are drug-free, who show up on time, who have clean records, and get the job done. But there are pieces like that, and it's the same is true in the medic front. In the midst of a pandemic, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. There's only 6 states out of 50 states and 6 territories that actually have streamlined programs to turn those medics and corpsmen into EMTs. Staggering, right?
And what I mean, you said you issued a report. Why? Right? Like, some of it is about the mismatch in the qualification. I guess you don't get a commercial driver's license, even if you can drive through the Khyber Pass, right? So just, if you could, just for a second, what are some things, if you're an employer, again, I see an opportunity here. If I'm willing to help that person get their CDL, if I'm willing to help the medic get their paramedic training, the qualification, what are some of the other things that, you can do quickly to get a jump on other companies to grab some of these folks?
A lot of it is investing in training, like or just, the Swift backup scholarship. There's some really interesting programs. The VA is now aggressively hiring medics and corpsmen themselves. Makes a lot of sense for them, right? They're not subject to the state licensure red tape that we see everywhere. That's the big problem in the medic corpsman realm. The state of Virginia just passed a law at the behest of employers to allow medics and corpsmen to come in and work in their hospitals and some other roles, sort of like certified nursing assistants, but without licensure. There's some stipulations around it, but I think companies where that red tape exists, they need to try and address it with their legislators, but also invest in training. Companies today do not like to spend money on training. It's a sad, but true thing. I'll give you an example. 1 million unfilled high-tech manufacturing jobs in this country, 1 million, right? There's a great nonprofit that we fund called Workshops for Warriors. They train veterans in high-tech manufacturing skills, CNC lathe operation, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, high-tech welding. They do it in 1/4 of the time that a junior college would do, 1/4 of the time, right? They have a 6-month waiting list for vets who want into this program, but companies won't fund it. They want them, they want their graduates. They have a 99% placement rate, but they don't want to fund the training that underlies this. It's a real problem. Companies need to invest in training to bridge these gaps.
You end up paying one way or another. You're going to end up paying to rehire. You're going to end up paying somebody more to stay an extra year beyond retirement, whatever. You're going to end up paying. You might as well train somebody. Which takes me to a question I do want to ask General. So we talked a little bit, getting people in the door. You've got them. You've trained them. You've worked hard. One of the big fears employers have is, I've just spent all this, time and treasure getting somebody into my company, training them up. Now they're going to get poached. What do you do at Microsoft to retain people once you've got them engaged, especially in an industry like yours, which is just, there couldn't be a hotter one?
Dan, we embrace them. I mean, we do everything we possibly can to make them feel like they belong. We talked a little bit about retention rates, and all of us know that, there are percentages out there of the veterans that leave their first job in the first 12 to 24 months. I will tell you that at Microsoft, over 80% of the hires, of the veteran hires, stay with us are still with us after 24 months. So it's about mentoring. It's about letting them know that they are important and that we care. And, it's not only the mentors, but the employee resource group, the ERG, that's made up of veterans, that it's a place where people belong, where there's a brotherhood. I mean, and we have about 2.5 years ago stood up officially the military employee resource group. Today at Microsoft, there are 9 ERGs. The first one 32 years ago, that was blacks at Microsoft. You have women at Microsoft, Asians at Microsoft, and so on and so forth. But each of those ERGs are today part of what is called the CEO Inclusion Council, which meets 4 times a year. The military ERG has a seat at that table. And so you do all these things, and veterans feel like they belong. They're a part. They're special.
Especially a company as large as yours, that's probably absolutely essential. So you don't just kind of get lost in the crowd there. Ben, give us some other tips. What do you see works about engaging authentically and keeping people engaged? This isn't just hard with veterans. This is hard with everybody these days, right? So how do you keep veterans to stick with you that, we may not understand when we're hiring them, we're trying to keep them around?
Yeah, I think an employee resource group is really helpful in developing that network, and veterans tend to spend a lot of time with other veterans and are encouraged by other veterans. I think that's very important. And I think one thing that veterans will realize is, while there are genuine impediments to their transition, network being one of them, I think that they'll find that the veteran network is one of the more powerful competitive advantages that they'll have. Is there is a veteran in, I would argue, any major institution or most institutions. You have to find them, and you have to use the tools of today to be able to locate them. So I think broadening that network and maybe the person sitting across from you in your office when we go back to offices might not be that best fit, but keep looking and keep finding. And I think another thing is building a sense in your community. I mean, let's be honest, veterans move around quite a bit and don't have. I think it's likely to see that they're not in the same location for every 5 years when they're active duty, right? They're moving around all the time. And so I think building a sense of community is important in keeping them, I think, longer in the community. And yeah, I think those two things are important. Broadening your network, I think, is one of the best practices that we've seen to keep veterans, happy with what they're doing, for sure.
And starting with at least having a plan, right? Like, at least you've got to be intentional about doing any of this. Got a question in from the audience. I encourage other people to put them in. There's some great tips being passed around in the chat box. But if you want to ask a question, just please, for the logistics of this, if you could put it in the Q&A box, which is there's a little link at the bottom of your Zoom screen, that would be easier for me to follow. Mary King asks, interested to hear any thoughts on hiring military spouses or disabled veterans. Anyone want to jump in here?
I'll jump in. The biggest and best organization in the country that does this work, like many, it's not a household name, but MSCCN, Military Spouse Corporate Career Network, is amazing. I highly recommend that. I can throw their link in the chat. They do more placements than anyone else in the space. However, there are some other organizations like Hire Heroes USA has a great military spouse program as well. Those two probably do the biggest volume and quality results for military spouses in terms of getting them the same kind of coaching resources that we give veterans, and they get phenomenal results. I think the picture has never been better for military spouse employment because of our society's acceptance of remote work, where before that was such a barrier. I've heard many times it said the most underemployed population in America are military spouses, because many of them have degrees far advanced to their active duty spouses, and they have to unlock it. Or if they do, as soon as they do, if they're in a law firm or an ad agency or whatever, they're moving. Or if they're a nurse or if they're a teacher and they have to get relicensed, it's really, really tough. So I think the remote work, acceptance of remote work, has opened up all kinds of opportunities. And those two organizations I mentioned are great on capitalizing on.
That's great. Jennifer Sharpton wants to ask you, General, what was the Microsoft Academy you discussed earlier? Maybe you could give us just a little bit more detail on that as well.
Sure. It's called the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy, MSSA. And it was designed to prepare anyone from the military, transitioning from the military, and by DoD policy, you have to be within 6 months of leaving the military to participate in what is called a skill bridge program. MSSA is a skill bridge program. Skill bridge programs are designed to help military members before they transition, to prepare them for what they might do as civilians. So it's for transitioning military and veterans. We have both. And somebody mentioned disabled. Disabled's welcome. I mean, if you're a military transitioning or a veteran, this program was built for you. 17 weeks. We do cloud application development and server and cloud administration, which are the two most in demand for new hires in the technology industry. And originally, when we started 8 years ago, we did this physically in person in a classroom using a university as an instructor. And we were at 12 locations across the country, including Oahu, Schofield Barracks. But with COVID, we either had to go virtual, and some SkillBridge programs were not able to go virtual, and so they had to go away. But we had about a week to get it all together. We went virtual, and now it's working out so well because now we're not stuck geographically in 12 different locations. We are now working with military members in other countries. And it's been a godsend, really, to go virtual with this program, to be able to reach out and touch more people. Hopefully that gave you, okay, let me add to, it's not only technical instruction, but it's also professional development. We do 80% of the time on hardcore tech skills, but 20% of the time on professional development, resume writing, interview, building confidence. And I will tell you that the people that go through this program, this is not me speaking, have said to me, this program changed my life. When I started it, I was one person. But now that I've gone through it, I am ready. I know how to figure things out. I will get there from here. I can do this. And hopefully that gives you a little more background on what MSSA is all about.
That's great. And Dan has been posting, for people who want more resources and ideas, Dan has been posting some links in the chat box as we go along. One thing, when we think about veterans, especially officers who are coming out of the military, we think about leadership. How do we tap this group when it comes to just pure leadership? And the folks we've hired, how do we track and identify them, the folks in the organization who can easily step into leadership roles beyond their current job? Maybe there are some useful facets of military culture that you can be utilized in a civilian setting that can help us out here. Ben, what are your thoughts?
I think it kind of echoes kind of the topic that we've discussed kind of already, which is how do you value a military service member's experiences, and I think a lot of companies have found best practices in being creative and in figuring out, well, I'm not going to, maybe before, if I have a choice between not attributing any value to this experience versus yes, this is 100% identical to job XYZ. I think they're finding they're being creative, and so to that point, I think that there's best practices there to be found. To start with that.
Dan, how about you?
I'll be short and sweet on this. There was a good friend of mine, retired Lieutenant Colonel, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, who had named Chris Ford. Some of us know him in the community. He's currently the CEO of Stop Soldier Suicide. And he likes to say, companies hire on skills and they fire on values. And, we do not assess people early enough on their values. Do they have the work ethic? Are they honest? Do they take care of their team? Are they mission focused? We're so absolutely focused on skills, and that's very important. But when you're talking about leaders, bringing leaders into the organization, values matter a ton. And ask yourself, in your hiring process, how much are you assessing that? How much are you really assessing that? Because ultimately, you may have someone who actually has the perfect go-matter job and might not be a team player, might not get along with others, might not be honest. It's amazing. Remember I told you about that pipeline analysis? I can tell you, I've looked at a few companies, and it's really interesting. That last stage, after you invested all this work to extend someone a job offer, the last thing they need is to pass that background check. It's staggering. Ask your HR people what the failure rate of your background checks is. It's probably around 50%. It's really high. You will find it will not be amongst veterans. There'll still be people who don't pass it, but at a much, reduced rate, because, people are attracted to the military service, are values oriented. And that matters. That matters in the ethical conduct of your business and in how leaders take care of each other.
But there are also trapdoors here for what don't we understand, and what is sometimes difficult for folks who have led in the military to adapt their style and work within civilian organizations. General, when you joined the private sector after a long and illustrious career in the Marine Corps, what was toughest for you to adapt to when it came to leading people in the civilian world?
Quite honestly, it's a different environment. And I'll speak for myself. It was difficult to get used to that. When you're in the military and you're in uniform, you walk into a room, people look at you and they know exactly who you are, what your rank is, what your experience is. I mean, it's right there. In corporate America, not so. And it takes time to work your way through that. And it's not only getting used to this new environment, but it's also a process of gaining your confidence, of seeing the value that you bring. And then when you get there, by golly, you've got to turn around and do everything you can to build the right environment for those that are going to come behind you. And I'm telling you, we've been doing that for years, and it works. And the circle continues to grow. The appreciation of veterans and what they bring continues to grow. This is a work in progress. It takes time. But what I like to say is that those who successfully make the transition have an obligation, which is twofold. They need to spread that lesson to the organization that they now belong to. And then they need to go back to military members and tell them this whole message that they have a lot to offer, and they should come into this prepared, confident, and with everything they have.
Dan, Ben, maybe you, some tips, folks who have led in the military, now leading in civilian life, and how we can help them, because there are definitely some differences. What did you face, and what are some tips here, Ben?
I think one thing that I took for granted, but I've learned it's so important, is that when I reached out to other veterans, they always took my call. They always wanted to listen about my experience. And I think the veteran network is an incredible competitive advantage. It's also helpful trying to build contacts within your industry, et cetera. So I think that's something that veterans could really appreciate. The second thing I would say is when veterans are talking to other service members that are looking for employment, I think just really focus in on, what were their contributions to the organization. And I think if you could, the military, for me, in my experience, and a lot of my friends, fellow service members, it was an incredible leadership laboratory. And I was blessed to have some great bosses who gave me, a long enough leash to try my hand on my own initiatives. And that gave me great confidence to go on an entrepreneurial journey that I started 5 years ago. But if you can contribute in an organization like the military and whatever your job is, I think you've got to have great confidence and conviction that you can do so at a larger company. I think larger companies can be, patient, but to General Cortez's point, if you can contribute in the military, you can contribute, you're in the private sector.
And we did get a couple questions in. I want to make sure we make time for them. Sorry to jump back in here, but Chuck Forrestal says, I run a company that operates in a non-military environment, no bases close by. What pool can I direct my HR department to? Dan, where do we start?
Yeah, easy. I mean, like if they go to our site, I'll throw it in the chat in a second. It lists our partners. They'll all work with you. It'll cost you nothing. They have pools of job-ready vets ready to go. Two of them I mentioned before, Hire Heroes USA and Vet Jobs, are national. Most of our other partners are regional. So if you have needs in a particular area, be it New England, be it the Southeast, be it the Southwest, we've got partners that cover pretty much the whole country. And you know, they're ready to partner with you. Sometimes some of them may ask you for a couple $100 to post on their job boards, but that's about it. And that ultimately helps you. So they're an amazing resource, and you go to callofdutyendowment.org/partners, and they'll be there for you.
That's great.
In every way.
That's great. General, a question on ERGs. Someone's just booted one up. They got their first intern linking up to Hire Our Heroes, but they're looking for some specific ideas on how a veteran's ERG can support the community. Any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Let me go back real quick to the person that asked, where do I connect if I want to hire?
Yep.
Terry Henderson. And the email address is V as in Victor - Henderson with a T at the end at Microsoft.com. So for the ERG, Gina Kirby and Tiffany McKimmey are the co-chairs of the Microsoft Military ERG. They are super. They are all over it. And when we're done here, I'll put their email address in the chat. If you want a tutorial on how to stand up an all-American ERG, Tiffany and Gina are the ones that can help you do that.
Fantastic. Thank you for that tip. Final couple minutes here. Give us a final thought on Veterans Day as we go off, and everyone is also looking to hire great people. What do you wish you knew about this when you were getting started, and what have you learned about it in the process of really getting smart on this particular topic? Ben, maybe we start with you.
I think there is some incredible infrastructure and resources available to veterans, first of all. And I think it's whether it's your GI Bill, helping further your education and broadening your network like Dan talked about. I think there's fantastic internships that veterans have, whether it be in Silicon Valley, across different Wall Street institutions that I've become familiar with. And you have the veteran network, which is unbelievable. And I'd be hard pressed to name an institution that I've worked with that didn't have a veteran in the organization that was willing to take my call. So you have some incredible resources, as well as various nonprofits that are really focused on helping veterans in their transition. And we work with them a lot at my firm, American Veterans Group. So you have this great infrastructure, these great resources. I think it's always marketing, and it's building partnerships. I think the firms that we've worked with that are the most successful have really figured out a way to work internal, but also build external partnerships. And then for the veterans themselves, just becoming educated, understanding your experiences, understanding what resources are out there. And then I think just broadening your network. That would be my advice.
Dan, give us a running down the sands here in the clock.
Yep, no problem. For the veterans, two things. Is as ready as you think you are, you can be more ready, and it's free. Go to one of our partners, get help. You need help. I don't care if you're a general officer or an E4, you need help. You will be better off if you get help. The other thing is be confident, don't be overconfident. So no one owes you a job. But what you've done, if you've had any leadership, even at the fire team level, at the most basic level in the military, it is valuable to the corporate sector. You just need to learn how to market it. For companies, a lot of people ask me, how do we get started? Again, go to our partners. But also, if you as an individual want to help, there's two wonderful organizations I mentioned before, Veterati and ACCP. I'll throw them in the chat. But you can volunteer 1 hour of your time at a time to mentor a vet through Veterati. It's super painless and super rewarding and a little bit addictive. It runs off the Match.com algorithm. So if you want to donate even 1 hour of your time to help a veteran, it's a great way to get started. I have a feeling it'll suck you in for more.
General, the last word is yours.
Well, this is an example of what we're doing today, of what we need to be doing. I've been at this for 15 years, And the more things like this we do, the more veterans we're going to reach out and touch. And not only the veterans, but also corporate America. They need to hear these things that we're talking about. And the last thing I'll say is, it's not just the veteran, but it's the veteran's family. That unit sacrifices so much for all of us, and we need to appreciate that today on Veterans Day.